Hello, everyone. Today is February 2nd. This is an enhancement subproject meeting of SIG architecture. This is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, and in general, just be awesome people. So we've got a few things on the agenda to discuss. Anna has dropped some enhancement team updates. She will not be here to deliver those. But let's go over those. And then I have a few things to mention that I've not put on yet. Secret technology that's no longer secret. Anyhow, we'll do a quick readout of Anna's topics. So first off, there is another participating SIG field added to the tracking sheet to make sure that sponsoring and participating SIGs have agreed to opt in. This was discussed with the previous enhancements leads, Jeremy, Nabarun, and Kirsten, and something to be considered in the future process if it doesn't exist already. So who was part of that meeting and wants to give more details?
Yeah, just at a really high level, there was a KEP that was opted in, but that KEP would require review from another SIG, and that SIG did not agree that it should be part of the release due to bandwidth constraints, like review bandwidth and whatnot. So this was an attempt at getting buy-in from all those involved, just to make sure that they're really opting in and not opting in, but not really.
For other people, basically.
Yeah, just getting agreement from the principals involved.
So I think that yes. I agree. I think we would need to figure out how to handle, because I would say that the review burden is going to be a little different than implementation burden. So figuring out kind of where that handoff is, like, do you have bandwidth to review this by enhancements freeze or like in time for us to get an exception out, or is it, will you be on board to help with implementation, right? And those are two different conversations. So yes, I agree, but I think that we need to kind of explode it and dig in a little.
Yeah, I can make an action item to iterate on that a little bit.
Yes, please.
So far in 121 enhancements, when chasing up KEPs, we've been asking if the other SIGs mentioned in the KEP.yaml are on board. We haven't kind of dived into like the details of how on board they are. We've just kind of asked if they're at least aware of it so far.
Awesome. Yeah, so I would say keep poking at that. And if we can get an idea of general involvement and then figure out what deeper involvement means later, I think that we should further define it before we put any expectation on people to deliver that information. Okay, and this readout is kind of for the sake of people who are going to listen to the recording later, although you can also read the meeting notes. So question, okay, so receipt KEP not being tracked in the tracking sheet, and enhancements freeze is coming soon, February 9th. That is next Tuesday. Woo! Get your memes ready. So we need to very deeply consider something that I popped up on the board recently, which is the idea of a type field for KEPs. Basically, the proposed types right now are in tree, out of tree, and policy. I think that we strongly need to consider doing that so that there's less of a question around these items when they pop up, right? So the receipts process is a process that is, it's policy and implementation, out of tree implementation, right? But it affects in tree delivery, right? So what would we call that? So we need to have that conversation, I think. And although the comments on the issue looked like support, I'm not sure I saw any objections to doing this. Cool. All right. So something to do for 121. But yes, for the receipt kept, we should, we're going to talk about it a little later in the notes, but we should definitely plan to deliver that for 121. Yeah, Navarun and Jeremy will give an update. All right, so the next one is, well, any questions?
Sorry, I just
Yeah.
wanted to confirm I understood. So we're going to be adding this type field to the kept for 121.
We
now
want to discuss this type field for 121.
Okay.
To deliver the receipts kept as provisional for 121 as well.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I was just confused a second there. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay, sweet. Let's take a quick break because I said I'd do it before we started recording, and I did not. For anyone who is new to the meeting and would like to say hi, what they're here for, all that good stuff.
All right. Can you hear me fine, guys? Hello.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is Naved. I am looking forward to work with you folks in SIG architecture. I've been an active contributor in Knative community, and I'm looking forward to see what's out there, work with you folks.
Welcome, welcome. Excited to have, especially getting to get some feedback from people across different communities that consume Kubernetes about how this process is working for them, as well as like welcome as a new colleague.
I'm hopefully a familiar face to most of you by this point, but I'm Stephen looking very suspicious there. No, I'm an Enhancement Shadow in 121, so I'm largely here to fill in for Anna, who can't make it. But I've been generally loitering around the release team since 118 or so. So yeah, my first time attending this meeting, so nice to see you.
Welcome back. And I see we have one more new Kubernetes org member. If you want to say hi as well and talk about what you've been working on.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Shaker. I'm active in enhancement project for I think last two to 3 weeks. I worked in migrating to new template. So I'm still continuing that. I created few test cases in for query command, and yeah, that's pretty much about me.
Welcome, and thank you so much for the work that you've been doing. It's really exciting to see people like doing some of the glue work, some of the stuff that like easily gets forgotten. Like Shaker mentioned, he's been working on converting basically the keps from the old style into the new style, which can be tedious at times, but what it does lead us towards is like Bob is saying in the chat, it's very much needed for us to proceed. It leads us towards being able to validate these keps in a new style, as well as starting to build some of this tooling that can build websites and elicit roadmaps and get plugged into KeepctlCTL. So thank you again for running through the repo and doing some of the maybe what could be considered lesser appreciated work. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I surely want to be part of designing the new website and using that cap.yaml metadata into for like practical use, like in website, or maybe fetching those data in another web application or main website. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and more coming soon on that. So next up, so anyone else? Did we miss anyone that wants to give an introduction? All righty. Okay, so question about the concern raised in the SIG architecture meeting that happened last week about an exception being filed by an individual versus a SIG. With enhancements freeze coming up, I assume we'll get a few exceptions. Should we plan to send out a communication if a process changes for 121? Yes. How will the exception process happen for the receipt process? What can we do in 121 to make the process similar to the future receipt process? Okay, interesting. So first off, yes, when an exception is filed, an exception needs to be approved by the owning SIG, right? So we'll have that validation from the owning SIG that this is something that they agree to work on for that cycle. So I think in that sense we should be fine. Any differing opinions there?
That's what we've done in the past too. I think individuals have opened the receipt, or sorry, the exception request, but it always has to be approved by one of the chairs from the SIG.
Right. So go for it.
Yeah. So traditionally, it's been happening over email. So I don't know like how we will do it in the receipts process. So that is something that we need to think of. Have an additional field or something. So or in the GitHub PR.
Yeah, maybe fields. We'll think about it. Ultimately, we want a tool to run over some set of content and spit out what's wrong, right? So if we have, I'm wondering if we need an approval field. We'll do the next thing first, because now I'm getting ideas. So how will the exception process happen for receipts process? What can we do in 121 to make the process similar to the future receipt process? Just reiterating that question or the set of questions. So part of the receipts process will be a set of pre-submit validations, right? So the way those validations will run still to be determined, but part of it will be as we move things from proposed into the accepted bucket or whatever we call these buckets, like that's it, right? The things that end up in that bucket that are accepted, those are the things that are accepted. If you're not in that bucket, you need to file an exception, right? And then your process, and then part of submitting that receipt will be getting approval from enhancements that is okay to submit that exception, as well as from the SIG that they have approval to include that exception in the release. So I think that our process will change slightly and we will need to dig into it a little bit more. But I believe that we're going to solve this with directories and pre-submits.
So I think the answer there is that we can't really align 121's process with the receipts process of the future.
Yeah, not yet. I think that we'll want to carry some things through the idea of having multiple approvals right across the SIG, the release team, and then the bots, right? The bots will be the new component.
So 1.21 stays the same. The enhancements lead will send out an email that, hey, freeze is coming up and here is the exception process and you need to do so and so.
Right. The only change, the only change for 121 is that we are moving from, or we have moved from everybody go crazy into Optin for the release. So the opt-in is supposed to set the stage for saying that, okay, well, the new version of opting in is the receipt, right? And speaking of receipts, the next thing up on the agenda is a receipts update from Naved.
Yeah, so there are a few updates on that front. I have added it to the 1.21 tracking sheet, but then again, it's kind of blocked on that policy versus entry thing. So traditionally what we have done is we are tracking those enhancements which are policy changes and possibly not entry changes, but then explicitly they have a loose validation on most of the criteria, and they're mentioned in the cap itself that, hey, these don't have any KK test plans, but they will have some test plans inside whatever policy changes applicable. And the next update is, so we have had a mega doc on the receipts roadmap or KeepctlPlan. Thank you, Laurie, for actually aggregating everything to a single doc. So we kind of will split out the contents of that doc, the roadmap, into two specific parts. One part will go into the design details of the KEP itself, and the second part will mostly be a KeepctlPlan README or user guide. And I know like there is a HackMD as well on brainstorming on that. So that will also have contents from that. One generic update is like Jeremy and I are periodically syncing on this. And this week we have a few sync ups scheduled so that we can get the details finalized and ironed out. So that for the enhancements freeze, we are not at risk. We can breeze through it. That's all.
So if you don't mind adding me as optional to any of those meetings, I can see if I can pop in, but I have ideas, and some of them will be disruptive to the changes that you will be planning to make. For folks who, let me pause. Are there any questions on Navarun's update before I get conspiracy theory here? Okay, here we go. So I was taking some time to stare at the Kubernetes Enhancements repo and some of the code that is in there. And my feeling, what I kind of walked away with was it felt like it was written by 5 different people. And that's roughly accurate. Based on the different things that have happened across time. One, we have the KeepctlPlan tools that were brought in. Basically, Chuck Ha wrote a bunch of tools to start doing query and validations on KEPs, and he agreed to donate those. So that is kind of like the base for our validation mechanisms. And then there were a lot of commands that were built around that, right? But these things were built by separate people. There's also Kepify. So we were talking about the KEP's website, and so you're talking about the KEP's website, and Kepify, I believe, will dump JSON that could be usable for building a Netlify site. So I'm not going to go into a deep code review or anything here because I think it would take too much time. But I will give you kind of the broad strokes of something that I was hacking on over the weekend and has just merged to the repo. It's somewhat of a functional rewrite of a lot of this stuff. And I kind of wanted to I did it on the weekend because I kind of wanted to get it out of the way before people started jumping into the receipts process build out. So a few things here. One, there is an API package, and the API package maybe doesn't exactly respect what an API package normally is. I'm calling it API for the sake of being able to flag. These have some common types that we're going to be using, but primarily to be able to flag this as no parent owner's true, and to force approvals through the following labels and reviewers, approvers. The KEP tool approvers and reviewers are basically everyone who's in the enhancements owners group minus Lori. Lori does not want to do code reviews, right? So there is so these approvers, reviewers have been applied across some of our common code areas. So Git hooks, API, CMD, docs, I believe, hack, internal, PKG, and test. Now, there are also so owners updates. I started updating some of the verify scripts. So basically, copy and paste from Kubernetes release and search and replace some of that content. So we have verify scripts now. The next piece will be kind of breaking those verify scripts into like, or breaking the scripts in general into what proves that we can build, what proves that all of our Go tests are running properly, what is a verification for kind of like code overall. So think shell checks, Go lint, Go CI lint, and other stuff that I'm forgetting at the moment. And then verify for contents, right? So think pull enhancements, verify keps, right? Now this will specifically go and do verification for the table of contents in those keps, as well as the metadata. So stay tuned for those additional pre-submits. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until after enhancements freeze to try to land any of those, because I don't want to be disruptive across all of the PRs that are in flight. But going back to this API package really quickly. So the first thing I laid out was something called a document. And once we, it's kind of like in, we're working on hacking up this this design doc. Jeremy put a great start on it for the KeepctlPlan command specifically. But there are a lot of people starting to work in this repo. So we're going to wait until it's a little crisper to drop it publicly, but that should be coming very soon. TLDR, very simple within this document file. There is a document interface. There's a parser. A parser will hold a slice of errors so that we can basically feed the parsing errors into that struct instead of into the actual set of data that we want to manipulate. Right now, the errors are stored. The errors for a proposal, the errors for a PRR are stored as a field within within the actual struct, and we don't want to do that. So document file and parser. The parser will take any IO reader. So if you give it OS file or something like that, it should work. We want it to spit out a document and an error, right? Now within, let's take a quick look at proposal. So Kubernetes enhancement proposal. So all of the content, or all of the kind of types for Kubernetes enhancement proposals are here. One, hold a set of proposals, be able to add to that set the actual content that is expected in a KEP, and then that validate function that we were the validate method that we were talking about, right? So this proposal document implements, satisfies that document interface, right, by implementing validate, right? This the KEP handler is a parser, right? The parser again is that struct that holds a slice of errors, and then we have a KEP specific parsing parsing method that will spit out a pointer to that, as well as an error if there are any, right? And then the same milestone feature gate and hash that we had from the KeepctlPlan package, right? Same was done essentially for the PRR stuff, but because we don't want them to conflict, and we also know that there will be document types that may need approval in future, their approval type was renamed to PRR approval, and it still has roughly the same content, the number of the KEP, the alpha beta stable, and then within those an approver, right? Again, the validate implementation for that, and a parsing for the handler, a PRR specific parser, right? So as we move into introducing receipts to this, I would consider a receipt to be a document, right? So the expectation would be that we would write a validation method for that document, as well as a parser to handle that, right? And maybe we eventually get to the place where we have a generic parser that can do this for everything based on, I had initially written it as like document types, right? So a document type would be some string, right? And then switch out to the individual parsers, right? But that is unnecessary for now, so I kind of stripped that out of this PR. So all of that to say that a lot of this repo is being rewritten right now. So give us a shout before you try to land any changes. I know that there are people writing tests. The other big change here is because I kept on bumping into trying to make what currently existed work when I kind of felt like it wasn't. So now there is a legacy package. Basically, everything that was in KeepctlPlan has been moved to a legacy package. So the goal will be anything that is importing the legacy package should be rewritten to not do that. Validation-wise, moving forward, we'll be using the Go Playground Validator v10, right? We should not have to write our own validation functions. There is plenty of content for this out there already. So very simply, our validate function actually just inits a new instance of this validator and validates the struct, right? So we're going to go back into this and drop in the expectations for validation. So expectations would be like certain fields are required, right? And essentially it's adding content here that's like validate required, right? So this should be a very simple sweep when we're ready to do it. And I'm likely going to do that in the next round of sweeps this week, now that this one has merged. So I knew I would, so in this meeting, I also realized that an exception is also a document type. And then what we can do is we can start playing around with that idea too, right? Any questions? I'm excited and worried that there are no questions there.
So I don't have any questions, but I have a comment. Since you mentioned in that PR of yours that we probably need to rewrite Capify through the Cobra way of doing things. So what I realized was what Capify is doing is basically kubectl query. So kubectl query, if you give it the output is equal to JSON, it churns out the same thing. So do we even need Capify anymore? Because it predates kubectl query.
Yeah, so I was going to rewrite Capify to be a Cobra command, and I was like, let me talk to the team during the week instead, because I had a feeling that there might be some overlap. So if we can prove that there's parity between those two tools, we can drop Capify for sure.
I'll look at it. So if there is overlap, can I just like create a PR removing Capify, or maybe I don't know, like if anyone is using Capify, should we practically proxy kubectl queries main command here because it's a package?
Roughly is what I had in mind. Basically pushing all the logic of Capify into, because all of the logic is in the command right now, pushing all the logic of Capify down into a package and reusing that as necessary. What I had in my head was essentially like, I don't know, KepCTL dump, or like maybe we can find a nicer name for that, that we can decide if it's like YAML or JSON, and what it'll do is scrape a repo and spit out something that's consumable somewhere else, right? And then, future looking, export is much better. I like that, James. Yeah.
We do have query though.
Yeah. So what it's really about is not so much the functionality, because we can wrap this, we can remix it however we want to. It's more so like the intent. We want to make sure with the command name that it's very clear what is going to be happening, right? Because we kind of need that for users, right? We need that if we're going to raise adoption for these tools as we build them out and get more contributors working on these. So like future looking, what I would see happening is essentially like KepCTL is running in a periodic job, and it's dumping to some bucket. There's another job to pick that up and generate a website. Like this is like, it becomes very hands off. Yeah, I think we're getting close to those ideas.
Generate.
Cool. So one more note about kind of merging all of these various streams. One idea that I had was types for people and groups, right? So so right now, again, this written by multiple people situation is happening where we have multiple fields that we have multiple types that are named the same thing that do something fundamentally different, right? So if you look at the milestone, the milestone struct for PRRs, the milestone struct holds an approver field, right? Whereas the milestone struct for a KEP holds something entirely different, right? Holds the, kind of a listing of the various milestones or the various milestone targets for alpha, beta, and stable. So trying to, if we can unify some of that stuff, figure out what the common concepts are. I think we already know them. But if you look at groups, we have, there's a discussion about like participating SIGs versus participating groups, right? All groups are, all things are of type group. If we do that and say that, a SIG is a group, a working group is a group, a, sub-project may be a group, a committee could be a group, right? And then run the validation based on that, what we would expect out of a group. So right now we would query, I think we query, something external, whether it be an owner's file or something, to see what the list of groups are, and then do a comparison based on that. So that's one aspect. And then two, validation on user fields. So a user could be an approver, a reviewer, editor, yada, 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 right? Making sure all of those fields are prepended with an @ sign so that we can look up their GitHub username, things like that, right? So doing validations on the field level as well should be coming soon. And yeah. I think that ends my rant. Cool. Any remaining questions on the receipts process or receipts kept in like next steps? All right, moving right along. So the next item is the releases page. So next steps to release the KEP's website. Any progress here? Do we know who put this up?
Me.
Yay!
I was just wondering if you'd had a chance to sync with Jim and if there's anything happening. It's a topic that we've talked about in these meetings past for obvious reasons. So just
Jim
wanted to know.
specifically, or because Jim is staring at the releases page with me, not the KEP.
Yeah, right. But we needed to find out where that should live before allowing KEP's website to go forward.
Oh, okay. I feel like the KEP's website can be added to the releases page as a follow-up. Like,
To let it move, to let it.
Yeah, I don't think we need to tie their destinies together.
Okay, that was not the idea before, so I'm just wondering what might have changed.
Sorry, what specifically are we?
This is the thing that Paris and other OSPO folks want, where they can go to the website and they can find the list of KEPs.
Entirely different from the releases page.
Okay, because that was what I was told, that we needed to have that decision where the releases page would live to unblock progress on this KEP's website. And
sorry to be, I don't remember the conference. Like, well,
it wasn't with you.
Okay, what?
That's one of the reasons why you don't remember it.
Yeah. So who said that? Because I don't believe that to be true.
I think I don't know anymore. Like that was December. Okay. I know I've talked to you and Abrun And maybe Jeremy is part of this conversation just because you crafted the KEP on receipts. And then in this mixture of things came forth, and I went around on this like 2 or 3 times to try to understand what exactly was needed. And I think you even asked the question, and when I brought the feedback to you, like, what do we mean by where does this live? And I was like, that's a great question. And then the answer became, we need to have the releases page location identified for this KEPS website to continue making progress. I think there's even a quote or comment on the issue.
Okay.
I'm digging it up right now to
Okay.
actually,
Okay.
because I'm just so confused. Maybe I should never bring
well.
this up again, because I just feel like this thing is mocking me or something. It's like, but you said.
So I think a general problem that we have, and like this is wearing like multiple hats at this point, right? I think a general problem that we have is like front end things, like someone to do a front end. So if you know folks that want to do a front end with us, or have experience with Netlify and getting some of these things shipped, feel free to send them our way. There are 2 separate efforts, and really more than 2, multiple efforts happening in tandem with different groups as the approving areas here. So there's the releases page, right? The releases page is intended to land on K website. What the intent for the releases page is that it will be kind of like the first step is like the straw man is like FAQ, right? Answering the frequently asked questions that we get around releases. When is a release happening? When is the cherry pick deadline? When is enhancements freeze? Can I see a timeline? Can you show me the KEPs? Where is the enhancement tracking sheet? Blah, 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 blah. All of those questions we want to answer on that page. Are there CVs? Are there deprecations happening? Where are the release notes? Releases page, separate thing from this meeting. We don't need to care about it, right? Eventually, when this KEP website goes live, we can maybe push it into that area, right? The KEPS website, this could theoretically live anywhere. If we are trialing it, we want to just get some data up in somewhere visible. If this is staging-keps.kates.io or something like that, I really couldn't be concerned where it lives, just that it lives at this point. But before we get it, this goes back to the data that we scrape, right? The data that we dump, how it gets composed. So we need to make sure that that is on point before we care about a website, right? I would say that because it affects sub-project owners and enhancement sub-team members, my first concern is KEPCTL. The presentation mechanism, we're going to be using the same functions to handle the presentation mechanism roughly, right, for the website. So we need to care about how the content is generated first, right, because that's going to be pushed around in these various tools. So we handle the data first, then we move on to the presentation. The website is important in a general like community happy feels way, but I would not call it like a target for us right this second, unless there's going to be someone dedicated to working on it.
Yeah, so that was the conversation we had before, but there are people who could work on it. So that was taken care of, but this was blocked because of this decision. And I'm looking for the issue because I thought you would know exactly what I was talking about, and you don't. And so something has changed.
So this maybe goes back to the owners of everything. So Jeremy just linked the current release markdown gets generated into a page.
Yes, there you
on
go. Thank you,
Kubernetes, on Kubernetes.dev, right? We do not own Kubernetes.dev. I was barely involved in release-wise making the decisions for what goes there. As like who owns this content for SIG release, our primary content, like the canonical references for the things that we do, live in K SIG release, right? The conversation that we're having with SIG docs is to pull out the public facing content, user facing, how do I get releases, all of that, all of the stuff I said previously, bring that into K website, right? K website not being Kubernetes.dev, totally different place, right? I think that I think what's happening is that other owners are thinking about decisions that should be happening here. I could see a world where once the release pages lives, we move or we link in the KEP website, or it becomes a subdirectory of that page. But we don't need to tie those destinies together at all right now.
Okay, so there's nothing then blocking the folks that were trying to work on it a few months ago from continuing their work? That would be Tim Bannister. We had another contributor jump on asking Karen Bradshaw.
Yeah, outside of getting the data right, they should let us handle cleaning up the way the data is generated, and whatever they want to write on top of it, I'm happy for them to.
Okay, so they can, okay, we clean up the data. They can do everything else.
Yeah, so some background on that, like since you mentioned like cleaning up the data and like have format of exporting the data. So this very requirement was the motivation of adding JSON and YAML exports to kubectl query. So that they are unblocked in having the data, and then they can play with it in any way they deem necessary. So the next steps were like, how do you make the data available to the K website repo, or how K website can take it up from the K enhancements repo and then putting it in the K website page, wherever it is deemed to be. That's where the decision was stuck.
Okay. So my first thought is that this doesn't go in K website yet, right? I think that we should stand up a staging ground and get CNAMEs in place and all that stuff, and then the correct infrastructure. Like this can be let it be its own site first and prove the concept before we start integrating with K website, because that's where the question about the releases page is going to come up. That's where it probably has come up. And as you can see, I'm not on this issue. So, yeah. Again, I would strongly encourage like we push these conversations into this meeting, into our channels, yada, yada, yada. There's also one note for the code content specifically is that they are all now tagged with area enhancements. All of those code subdirectories. And kind of the reason for that is I've been getting tagged on a bunch of PRs for review and had no idea they existed because it's not really easy to bubble up. It's not really easy to bubble up what's supposed to be like what's in review for this repo, right? Mm-hmm. If you're a reviewer approver on this repo, essentially, so for me, I've maybe been on this repo for like 2 years or something like that. I have notifications turned off for K enhancements because I'm not reviewing every KEP, right? So now hopefully we have a mechanism for kind of drawing out the very specific things to the code content. We can get this on a project board if those items aren't already on a project board. And I believe a good chunk of them are from the issue side, but not necessarily from the PR side, right? So fix that, raise the visibility of some of these things, and then we can start walking these boards in these meetings, right? So output from that, Lori, because I went on a winding path. TLDR, like, let's get the data in place. Like, give us a little time to get the data in place, firm up this proposal, make sure we feel content with that. And have them review it, and we'll start handling execution. I think a lot of the pieces are already in place to do it before we turn them loose on doing this website. I think we want to make sure that we're happy with the validations or the rewritten validations before we do that.
Okay, get the data in place, become happy with the written validation. Have contributors review that. We'll start handling execution before asking them to start helping.
Yeah.
All right, I'll put a comment on the issue so that we can find that again.
Yeah.
Okay.
The team. So we
Or over time.
We are, so technically we're not, because this is not a new meeting invite yet.
Oh, wow. Look at you stretching those rules. You could be a lawyer.
Right? So the last thing I wanted to mention was, I guess, not sure who put this up. This might be you, Lori,
Yep.
or
It's me.
road mapping Kep.
Yep.
Do you want to, so one, if you thought this was going to be 45 minutes and
No.
have something you have to jump to, feel free to.
No.
If not, we're gonna keep jamming for a little bit till the half. Yeah, the half. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So basically the idea is just something that Stephen and I have been talking about since last year, and you probably were thinking of it years before that. It's just like, wouldn't it be great if we had a Kubernetes roadmap to show customers, product managers, each other? And just in some of the work we've been doing on enhancements, process improvements, it seems like there are some SIGs that might be a little more flexible in adapting to process changes than others. So we may not be able to get every group on board, but what if we created a subset group of SIGs who we would ask if, hey, can we actually see about putting together a roadmap, even if it's small, even if it's not going to be perfect, but just to get the concept started. And the trick here is to get SIGs that are maybe working on different things to actually find the common ground and look at Kubernetes as a holistic project where their work influences each other. I mean, I think there are these kinds of alignments that are already in our midst, and some of them are quite strong. But given the sample size of the SIGs that we would talk to, they may not have worked before. So that might just be one challenge in educating them. Well, they can educate each other, right, about what they're doing, and we would help facilitate that kind of interaction.
So, yes, absolutely. Sorry, I ended up staring at another conversation simultaneously.
It happens.
Upside was a conversation from you. So so I totally agree. I think that it's going to be very important that we have champions as we continue to evolve our processes, and that we're kind of establishing a better feedback loop with them. I think that it is I think that it's easy for us to fall into maybe I wouldn't call it a trap necessarily, right? But there's kind of already deep collaboration between SIG release and architecture on this idea of enhancements. I think part of this feedback loop, we want to be more vocal about what we're changing, when we're changing it, how we're changing it, how to deliver feedback back into that process. And I think that a way of doing that, again, people, process, tools, right? So we have, I think we've put a lot of great people into this room already. I think that we are starting to generate some processes that are sustainable for the community long term. Receipts just being a start of what we can do, and then tools, right? Tools are going to wrap those processes and help make them successful. And I think that from a roadmap perspective, my crazy hack in the basement weekend ideas was, and this may be I may be standing on the shoulders somewhat of something that Caleb was thinking about a while back, and we might actually have the stuff that we need to do it now, is a KeepctlPlan command, right? Now the KeepctlPlan command, and this is in the design doc that will open up once it's cleaned up later. The KeepctlPlan idea is essentially that it would run through, again, same validations. It's using all of these components that we're writing right now, but it would scrape keps and give you a different view, right? If you said KeepctlPlan with no arguments, I think it would just spit out what's coming.
So maybe we can have something to look at on that. I'd rather focus on the people part, because that's something I think the whole group can actually hack on, if that's okay. Because this is a 3-tiered program. Like I wanted to pitch this idea just to get a feel, and then I actually wanted to leave because I have to leave. But I wanted to see if we could just get the group's feedback on whether this idea is good or not, and just hear from everyone in this group.
So sorry, I was trying to say that like those two things are going to end up meeting in the middle, and I agree.
Okay. So what does everyone think? I mean, Naved, you're going to be working in architecture a lot. Is this something that you think that you could help drive? I know you just got started, but Dims will be there and others will be there, and
Sure. I'm looking at I'm getting to know the whereabouts, like what's going on exactly. So it's new for me. So let me digest this. I'll come back with a better review on the things.
I mean, it's basically just an old concept applied to a new domain, and maybe roadmaps. I've even read that roadmaps are passé now, and we shouldn't think about roadmaps at all. But something that definitely gives us a sense of what's coming in Kubernetes, like a longer term view than what we might be offering today, that folks could refer to.
So the wild idea of kind of like meeting in the middle is that we gather this feedback from folks, like, what do you think is on your roadmap, or what are you personally planning?
Yeah.
And then the tool is running something that says plan milestone 122 or something like that, and it spits out like, well, this is what the tool said.
Okay,
right?
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like, and then try to work on cleaning up that diff between the two, right?
So is that another enhancements related tool then that we could actually try to get some help with bringing to market? Is it something? Yeah, I know. Nice speech, right? What I'm saying is nice choice of word.
Too many.
Yeah, let's monetize this. No, but what I'm saying is, like, we have kept CTL pretty well underway, but is this something that?
So this would be
have folks work on.
So this is why it's in the secret doc right now, because this is like something that would be part of KeepctlPlan, but it's not part of KeepctL, but it's not fully planned yet.
So would we be dependent on this tool being up and running before we would go with any sort of roadmap?
No.
Okay. So that's where I'm like, let's think about the people. Good.
Yeah, no blocking in 2021. People go do stuff.
So, I mean, yeah, so that's where, like, in Nabru, if you're an API machinery, have you started joining those meetings yet?
I want to, but they happen like at 3 a.m.
3 a.m. Yeah.
So I'm trying to grab some hold on issues there, and probably asking them, like, can we start a meeting in an alternate time, like a triage meeting? So kind of tricky.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I sync with the meeting notes and the recordings.
So maybe maybe you can observe some things, and we can bring them to this group, right? And like, maybe that's something that we should be doing, is taking a look at meeting agendas, seeing what SIGs are talking about, and then discussing it, and then trying to identify ways to help them, or just noticing like, oh, they're gonna try to deliver X kept this milestone. That's something pretty interesting that we know we've wanted. Like, oh, well, I mean, I know the enhancements team does this a fair amount already, but maybe we need a wider window for, maybe it's for like the next couple of milestones as opposed to just the immediate one.
So I like the end goal. What I worry about there a little bit is shifting the expectation back to like enhancements querying versus people opting in, right? I don't like.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to get people into the pattern where they expect us to be popping in like, oh, hey, what's going on?
Oh, that's true. But ideally, there's folks from the SIGs themselves. I mean, people who are already joining. So, you know, if you're in a SIG and you also join enhancements, you can just be like the intermediary, bringing that information back, and then.
So the idea many moons ago was to have a SIG PM liaison for each of the SIGs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to kind of create that feedback loop between the two. There are a bunch of like great ideas that were generated in SIG PM that never happened because we did not have the people for it. So it might be worthwhile to like start digging up notes and see what we got. But I like the idea of like a liaison, right? A PM, whatever we want to call it, to create that feedback loop. But I really worry about us doing it.
Yeah, agreed. Maybe that is the first step in trying to roadmap, like getting someone in the SIG who is interested in building towards this roadmap plan, and they become the liaison from within their SIG. So it's not outward going in, but in coming out.
Exactly.
And then they can start talking and we can facilitate the discussion between those folks from the different SIGs.
And yeah, and then also, so part of the reason for plan, again, not fleshed out yet, but a lot of people ask for data. We don't have data. We have data in spreadsheets and the data is hand cobbled, right? Being able to have plan, we can start doing diffs across time of different ways that we generated this content and see what happened, what didn't happen, start comparing slips based on different views of point in time. So it gives us the ability to start generating the data, but it's not necessarily the first step. I think we're going to end up like having ideas about it and then kind of like slowly meeting in the middle after discussions with other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do we have an action item?
We do.
Send messaging.
Send
them an email.
Hey, what's up? I would say maybe we want to hit this for post enhancements freeze.
Okay.
Give people like one less thing in their inbox that they're likely to miss in the lead up, and two, maybe some extra time for us to chew on this.
Okay.
The group and the enhancement sub team for 121 can chew on
okay.
that.
You could talk in the channel, I guess.
Yeah, let's jam on the channel. I will say that we are 1 minute over now. Final parting note, please do continue to hang out in the channel, attend these meetings. The big final note is that we have issued a doodle for a new meeting time to hopefully grab some more folks in this. Lori, are we good on the doodle? Do we have a time? Do we have a new time?
No, I would give it till Thursday.
Okay. So this Thursday, February 4th, doodle will be closing. If you want to vote on a new enhancement sub-project time, please do so before then. The following meeting will start this new time. Cool?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Great conversation. Lots of great ideas today. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.